back to Daughters of the King. I am so excited to share Tori Lesnier's story with you today. I had the privilege of meeting Tori when we attended Heritage College and Seminary together. I was very scared to walk on campus. I didn't know anyone, and I know that you're going to share your journey with Heritage as well. But I had the opportunity to meet you, such a beautiful, soft-spoken leader with such grace, and we just had so many great conversations over I guess it was 2 years, really. And it was really special, even though a lot of it had to be on Zoom at the beginning, which was okay. But once we got into person, it was so much better, so much better. So welcome, Tori. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on this podcast and just answer some questions and share my story a little bit. I'm loving your ministry, and this is such a privilege. So thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful. Well, let's learn a little bit about you, and then we're going to get into a couple of questions and talk about your faith journey and how you got to where you are today. So I'm very excited to share this with people. So Tori, your life is filled with in-betweens. Sounds like me too. And when you were learning to love this stage, you are a recent graduate of Heritage College in Cambridge, Ontario, where you studied Bible and different cultures and enjoys learning about life in different parts of the world and being creative. She loves to capture God's creation through photography and is currently interning at her local church. And she works with the kids, youth, and outreach. So you are a very busy young lady. That is for sure.
Yep, definitely.
Yes. So maybe what we can do is we can go kind of right back to the beginning and share a little bit of your upbringing of faith and just your early beginnings of that journey. Let's talk about that now.
Yeah, for sure. So my parents actually came to Canada from Eastern Europe before I was born. And so I was the first one in my family that was born in Canada. And because of that, I grew up around a lot of different cultural things, like different traditions, different foods, music of different languages was always playing in the background. Things like that. And I really loved that. And that had a huge impact on my life. My parents became Christians a little bit before I was born. So I grew up going to church. And I was really blessed by the church ministry, like through Sunday school, through all the VBS and camps and different things like that. I knew who Jesus was. I knew I wanted him in my life. I struggled a lot with understanding like who I was in Christ for a long time. And I was scared that I was gonna like lose my salvation or different, I don't know what was gonna happen. But I was that kid that always said the Lord's Prayer whenever people asked, like, you want to commit your life to Jesus? I did that many times.
Yes, totally relate.
Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah.
But I am really thankful that I had what I call like a quiet testimony. It's not super dramatic, like life changed, because I was fairly young when I did want to give my life to Christ. So I still recognize that that is like an amazing act of God, and thank him for the blessing of that family and upbringing. But he did have to work a lot in my heart to just kind of help me know that my salvation really depended on Christ and not my own work or my own commitment to him in a sense. And I really wrestled through that when I was growing up a little bit, and then also when I was a teenager, because I wanted to be baptized, but I was like, is my faith real? Is this real? So I had to study the word, and I had to go and talk with people in my life, and they really helped me understand that, yeah, my salvation was real if it was based on Jesus. So I was baptized, and I still had to learn a lot about his grace and about all the things that come with following Christ. But I'm really thankful for the upbringing that I had for that.
I think it's interesting. I love when I was reading through your notes about the whole concept of a quiet testimony. And I think that for us that have grown up in a Christian home, and it was just, we were immersed in it, and it's just what we knew. We lived, we breathed it every single week. And you think that your testimony isn't valid. And I think you bring up such a great point, because that's what heaven celebrates, is the one sinner that
Yeah.
repents, the joy in the heavens for this
Mhm.
salvation story. And I think it's really beautiful because some people will realize today that my story is worthy, and it doesn't have to be this crazy story, because so many people do have those stories where they were just taken
Yeah.
out of the deep, dark depths and brought into
Mhm.
the light. But you know what? We're all in the dark until we meet Christ.
Yeah.
So I loved your concept of that quiet story, but yet it's a loud and beautiful story, because you get to share
Mhm.
it now, not only where you've been traveling, but through your school adventures at Heritage, and then what you're doing now with the youth. And that is a massive inspiration for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm very thankful for it looking back.
Mhm,
Like I can see how God protected me from a lot of things.
mhm, mhm.
And like both testimonies are important, the
Yes,
quiet ones and the really obviously
yes,
transformative ones,
yeah.
but they're all like God's salvation, right? Salvation
Mhm,
belongs to the Lord. So they're
mhm,
all amazing. It's just
mhm.
different stories, and I'm thankful for that now, but it was something that I had to wrestle through.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. I was actually talking with somebody last week about how they're just looking for a sort of testimony or story that they can relate to. They
Mhm.
were saying that they just feel like there's so many stories out there that are just something I cannot relate to where this person was and where they are now today. So I think you being here today is so critical, to allow people to be encouraged and affirmed that, you know what, my story is worthy, and I have a
Mhm.
great God story. So very
Mhm.
exciting. So one of the things I was reading was the amount of languages that you were exposed to. Um, so maybe talk a little bit about just this beautiful cultural background. I know you touched on it a little bit growing up, but maybe just expand a little bit about that, because I think that is so neat as to where God had led you last year, which we'll get into. Yeah, talk a
Yeah.
little bit about this beautiful cultural background that you have.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't speak very many languages, but I grew up hearing a lot of languages. So my mom and her family speak Hungarian. They're from Hungary, from Budapest, and my dad and his family speak Polish, and they're from Poland. So they still speak those languages, and all four of my grandparents are still alive and are in
Wow.
Canada. So I know I'm so thankful.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not, I know that
amazing.
that's a gift.
Yeah.
Um, but so we grew up going, my brother and I, we would go to their house all the time. And even now, like we'll go and, or if there's a family birthday party at our house, like people are just talking in different languages. Um, and for my parents growing up in Europe, they also had to learn other languages growing up. So,
Mhm.
like my mom also knows German, and my dad learned Italian because he lived in Italy for 2 years. So
Wow.
those languages also got brought in one way or another through music or through movie or through just speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was always kind of just different languages, and my mom also really has a heart for cultures and for learning about what life looks like for people around the
Mhm.
world.
That's great.
So that was a huge influence for me as well, because she
Mhm.
would always read us different like missionary stories, or we have a world map on our table, like our kitchen table. So it
Mhm.
was always just something like exposure to different cultures, exposure to
Right.
different languages. Um, so that, yeah, definitely had a huge impact on
Mhm.
the way that I grew up.
Oh, for sure. I can relate to
Hmm.
the not necessarily a world map, but in our kitchen growing up in BC, we had this little tiny nook, and behind us was like this wall of missionaries. And so I
Hmm.
remember being exposed very young to Germany or Africa or wherever these people were that we were praying for or supporting, or vice versa, they were praying and supporting us as well. So it was like a
Hmm.
really neat, moment when you're young to think about the world beyond your house when you're very young. And it sounds
Yeah.
like that's what you were exposed to, which led you to study where you are, which we will get into in a minute. But actually, well,
Hmm.
you know what we could do? Why don't we even just talk about that now? Because you alluded to your teen years and making a faith decision. Maybe we can talk a little bit about your journey now to Heritage, um, and how that kind of all unfolded for you.
Yeah, for sure. So I knew one person at Heritage. I had never heard about it. I didn't really know what it was. But I knew one person that said
Mhm.
they were going to Heritage, so there was that seed planted in my
Right,
mind.
right.
Um, and I was homeschooled growing up,
Mhm,
and I needed to wait until I was 19 because that was like the admission requirements for colleges and universities because I didn't have a diploma.
mhm,
Um, so I so I was working at a library, and I really liked that I was doing a lot of work with people,
mhm,
and I was thinking maybe this is something I'm interested in. Um, so I want to go to Bible college because that it was something that was important to me. I
mhm.
actually read about it in a book. That was kind of my first exposure to Bible college because
That's neat.
it just was a new, yeah, it was a new
Yeah,
thing. So in a book series I read in high school, she went to Bible college, so I wanted to go to Bible
yeah.
college.
You're like, sounds like a
Um,
good idea.
yeah, so I kind of looked around at different schools, and Heritage was the one that I kind of felt like God was leading me to.
Mhm,
But I still had to wait until I could apply to it.
mhm,
So I did a course through Feb Central, which is like a women's ministry course that met at Heritage. So
mhm,
before I applied, I went to that course, and the first day they just had like an introduction at a local hotel.
mhm,
Um, so I went there, and then my mom and I went to Heritage
mhm.
just to check it out. You know,
Yep.
this is where I'm thinking of going. This
Yeah.
is where I'm going to be meeting for this class for the next few months.
Right.
Um, and then we walked into the office and were greeted really warmly, really friendly. Um, and we ended up getting a whole guided tour, even through the dorms and different things.
Okay. Mhm.
I just remember walking around campus and thinking, wow, everyone is so friendly here.
That's
Like
good.
everyone's smiling, everyone's so kind. So that was like a huge first
Mhm.
impression for
Yeah,
me.
for sure.
And it was, yeah, one of the main reasons I wanted to go. So I applied for a year and then transferred into the 4 year right away. So yeah, that's kind of how I got to Heritage.
That's so neat. So when you arrived at Heritage, it was just before COVID, right? Because COVID
Yeah,
hadn't
so
happened
my
yet.
yeah, my first year was 2019. So I had like a full semester and a half at Heritage, and then halfway through the winter semester, COVID kind of became a
Mhm,
thing, and
mhm,
we were asked to actually leave early. So I think
mhm,
we had just gotten back from reading week or something like that.
mhm.
Yeah, so that was a very interesting experience.
Oh, for sure. Everybody has a crazy story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you did go home, but then you were able to come back. I remember reading in some of your notes too that you were able to go back, and then you
Yeah.
were trying to apply to different roles. So talk about how some of the doors closed, and then how some of the doors opened for you over your like second, third, and fourth year.
Yeah, for sure. So God definitely was directing my steps at Heritage. Um, I was very eager to do a lot of different things, and my first year I applied for being an RA, which is a
Mhm.
resident assistant.
Okay.
I applied to work in the library, and I ran for student council, and I didn't get any of those.
It's so
And then we
hard.
were
It's
sent
like
home.
door closed, door closed, door closed. You're like, what are you doing, God?
Yeah. So that was really stressful, and I was very disappointed. But God was working things in His own way and His
Yeah.
own timing. So I guess that was just His way of saying, just wait and trust me, and I will, yeah, I'll direct you.
Mhm,
So my second year, when I came back in the fall, and I didn't have any of those roles,
mhm,
and I was just doing my school. I went to biblical counseling for some things, just for like the stress of some of the COVID things that had happened, and
mhm,
I
mhm.
didn't realize it affected me so much.
Yeah.
So that was very much a season where God was like, "We're gonna work out what's in your heart, and then I'll
Right.
give you some more things."
Right.
Um,
Such
yeah,
a good perspective.
I
That's
can
such
say
a
that
good
now.
perspective.
It took some time though. Um, so during that second year, I halfway through the year, I got asked to work at the library because they needed some more help.
Mhm.
And so I did that. And I was part of two committees, the art and the missions committee, which was a really cool experience. And I really loved being part of those groups.
Mhm.
Yeah. So at the end of my second year, I applied to be an RA again for
Mhm.
my third year. And so I did do that. Um, and they asked me to come on for the third year.
Mhm.
And that summer, they said, "We've hired this team, but we're stepping down as directors. So we're not sure who the new directors are going to be, but here's the team that you have."
Okay.
So again, we were like, okay, I
Yeah.
guess
Another faith
God is
move,
working.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So that summer they hired new directors and they're so sweet. And I love them a lot. So that's a little shout out for
That's
them.
awesome.
Um, but yeah, so that the fall of my third year, I came and I was an RA, and then through some circumstances, the head RA actually had to step down, and so they asked me to be the head RA for my third year in the
Okay.
fall. So I was not expecting this. I was
No.
like, why am I the head RA?
It's
But it
overwhelming.
was a
That's a big position,
yeah.
right? Mhm.
Yeah, I was very intimidated, but it was really special. And the residence director that kind of took me under her wing, gave me a lot of grace and I
Mhm.
really appreciate her input and time in my life.
Mhm.
And some of my best friends are from that year and then the following year,
Amazing.
because I got asked to come back for my fourth year as the head RA. So that yeah, usually doesn't happen in that way.
No,
So,
no, but you know what? God knew what he was
yeah,
doing.
yeah, it was definitely God working it out and saying like, okay, you're not gonna do this now. You're gonna do this later, and you're
Right.
gonna do this. So,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of like my RA journey.
Yeah.
Um,
That's very special
yeah,
because it's a huge leadership responsibility and an opportunity for you to spread your wings and to gain experience that you probably never planned on. But that likely led you into more of that ESL component too, the ability, probably with your confidence and being able to take on new things. So maybe talk a little bit about how you ended up into kind of the ESL and even into the classes that we were connected to.
yeah, for sure. So I had to look for a placement, for a ministry placement for my first year. For the second semester. So in the first semester, Dr. Linda Reed came to our class and talked about how they have an ESL ministry teaching
Mhm.
English to internationals that have come into the area.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. Like I know my parents had to do ESL when they came to Canada way back when.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll check this out. I
Mhm.
went and I kept on going.
Just kind of, you just
So
fell in love with it.
yeah, exactly. And my role definitely changed throughout the years, but
Mhm.
I stuck with it pretty much for all 4 years.
Mhm.
At first, just being like a table leader, and just the main goal is to get people talking and give
Mhm.
them a sense of community, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of loneliness,
Mhm.
but they're so
Sure.
sweet. I love the people that I've been able to interact with,
Yeah.
and yeah, they're such a blessing to me.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. For sure.
yeah, so I did that. And then as I was going through this other track of like growing in different skills and learning in different classes, some of the ones that learned we've studied together.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, sorry, my brain is just like
There's a lot
my
of
brain.
information. You have such an incredible story.
There's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so ESL, I was a leader and then I learned some teaching skills through the TESOL class. And then I was given more opportunities to kind of grow in that
Mhm.
and teach more and more and create lesson plans and help with different administrative things in my last year especially. So it was a really cool opportunity.
Wow.
and I grew a lot from it. So.
Absolutely. I think back to when Dr. Linda Reed would be sharing so passionately about this ESL program and the curriculum that had been created, and then being able to go to her home and interact with some of these students that were internationals that they just wanted to be loved. They wanted to be cared for. They wanted to be shown what to do, what to say, where to go, how to live here in Canada. And I just love the heart that you had for these young women and what Dr. Linda Reed was just able to share with us, and how the impact of this program, well, you'll never know the full impact, but I was impacted so significantly by what you were doing and your heart for it. So when you first mentioned that you wanted to go internationally to Italy for last summer, I thought, of course, like that totally would be something she would do. So maybe talk a little bit about what that was like for you, saying yes to going abroad for, I think you were there for, was it 4 or 5 months?
It was just over 3, so it was a
Three,
little bit
okay.
shorter. It was for the summer, but
Right,
it was
okay.
a really amazing experience. Yeah, and even there, God was definitely preparing the way. Um, yeah, so I didn't know that I had to do an internship when I first started in my program at Heritage. The first time I heard about it, I was at lunch my first year, and I sat in the cafeteria, and a student asked me, "So where are you going for your internship?" And I was like, "What
You're like, I
internship?"
don't know.
I don't know. But it's actually so cool how God worked it out, because I went to the same place that that person had just come from, or
Really?
that they were going. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't remember the timeline exactly, but it was the same place. So the way God worked it out was so cool. Um, so yeah, so normally internships take place the summer of between your third and fourth year,
Mhm.
so that you can come back and you can finish your program and then graduate.
Right.
But just because of some of my situation and finances, I had to postpone it, so that I could work that summer.
Mhm.
But even that summer, I remember asking for prayer for that. And one of my mentors kind of really helped me work through that and pray through that. And one of the things, sorry, she said was she asked God to bless or block an opportunity.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I loved that prayer. And that's something that
Mhm.
I still pray for sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
in decisions in my life. Just
Right.
like, God, bless it or block
Yeah,
it.
it's true. Yeah. Don't let me
Yeah,
walk this way if you don't want me to. Right.
exactly.
That's
So
great.
he definitely blessed my Italy trip. Um, so my fourth year, it came in the fall, still didn't know where I was going, and that was a little stressful.
Yes.
But through different relationships and just meeting some mobilizers and missionaries, I got connected to the organization I went with,
Mhm.
Cross World. And I got connected with the missionaries in Italy and another place. And I jumped on a call with both of them, and
Mhm.
felt like God was really leading me to Italy. And it just kind of made sense because of my background, because of the different
Mhm.
influences in my life.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I applied. I remember having some of my friends pray for me as I submitted my
Mhm.
application, and that was such a sweet
Beautiful.
moment.
Yeah.
And I got accepted and started this process of this big thing that I had never done before, didn't know where to
Wow.
start.
Wow.
But they had some really gracious help that I got just from
Mhm.
the mobilizers and missionaries. And it was, yeah, ESL was part of my internship too in the summer. So that again, like something God was preparing for
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Um, and one thing that I was a little bit concerned about was the food, just because I have some medical issues. I get vertigo sometimes.
Mhm.
So I needed to be gluten and dairy free.
Wow.
Um, and so when I asked the missionary in Italy, of all places,
Yeah.
like, is this possible? Because I have this
Right.
is a concern for me.
Mhm.
They're like, yeah, I think it'll be fine. There's lots of things. And in northern Italy, it was so easy to find things. Like, it was a
Wow.
gift from God.
That's amazing.
Um,
That would be really stressful because you're going from
yeah,
your comfort here of what you know you can plan for to complete unknown.
yeah.
Mhm.
But it was such a cool opportunity, and I got
Mm.
to meet so many like believers and see the ministries that God is working. Um, a lot of Europe is what's called like post-Christian, so there's a lot of like hard soil in people's hearts, and it was really cool to be able to go and see like here's a small church plant. This is what
Yeah.
the Lord is working in this country.
Wow.
And then there's all these camps that Christians are running that people are coming to, and they're hearing the gospel. So it was a really sweet few months.
Wow, that is amazing. Just so you know, we have about 6 minutes. They can edit this in.
Yes.
So if we don't wrap up enough, then I'll just send you another Zoom link, okay?
Okay.
Because I don't want to stop our conversation if we can avoid it. Well, I think it's amazing because God can plant a seed and cultivate it over a lifetime. And so that seems to be the case for you. And it's funny because when you speak about going to Italy, my youngest one, I hear Italian here all the time because she's starting a language program because she really wants to go to Italy. And she's like, I
Hmm.
don't know, I just really want to go to Italy. So she's learning Italian right now. So it's quite funny. So you just don't know why God
Exactly.
does something to prepare you for something down the road. And it's just like that common thread that I keep having come up with young women that I've been talking with is just like that, saying yes, stepping out in faith. But then all of a sudden you're at the stage in your life now where you're working at a church and you're involved in youth and ministry and outreach. You can start to look back and go, wow, okay, that was really cool that God blessed that. And then I love that terminology. Then he blocked something and he put me
Yeah.
in a different direction. I think that's amazing. So I have a question for you about just in general for young women today. What do you think some of the bigger struggles are for young women today and maybe how you can encourage them?
Yeah, for sure. I think probably one of the biggest struggles is identity.
Mm,
Um, I feel like we're told to be all kinds of things, or that we should know who we are and be this or that, or do this or go there. There's so many voices trying
right,
to speak into our lives.
right.
Um, but in Christ, and we should be in Christ, and we should be in the Word, and
Mm,
that should be our greatest identity.
yeah.
And this is something God's still working on in my own life,
Mhm,
but He's definitely given me a greater confidence in just who I am in God, and that I don't need to fear other
mhm.
things, or I don't need
Love that.
to seek the approval of man.
Right.
Um, Again, still very much a work in progress, but I
I
think
understand
God,
that.
yeah,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think it's okay if we take some of that pressure off and some of that focus off even ourselves.
Great.
We don't have to have everything figured out, especially as young women
Yeah.
in the church and in Christ.
Hmm.
And we need to recognize that there will be times when we will fail and we'll mess up,
Hmm.
but we can look to God and we can look to His
Hmm.
faithfulness and
Absolutely.
know that we're not messing up His plan.
Yes.
And that's really
Hmm.
comforting.
Love
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was kind of reflecting on.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I mean, we all can struggle with that. Doesn't matter what age and stage we're at. But it's being grounded in the word. And speaking of the word, you had mentioned a Bible verse that was important to you and a worship song. Do you want to share those two today?
Yeah, so this summer I was reading through the Gospel of Luke, and there was one part in particular. It was kind of the parallel to Matthew 6, which is talking about anxiety and how Jesus says, "Don't be anxious."
Hmm. Hmm.
And I love this line that is in Luke 12,
Hmm.
31 to 32. I'm not sure if that reference is correct, but
We'll double check.
yeah. But it says, instead, seek his kingdom, and these things, meaning all the provisions that you need, will be added to you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom.
Mm.
And that just really resonated with me in the summer
Hmm.
because there was all these things that I needed while I was in Italy, or when I was thinking ahead to my time at home again. And it was just a reminder, like, don't be anxious. God knows what you need. He cares for you.
Hmm.
And He delights to give you what you need in Him.
Yeah.
So that was just, yeah, it just struck me. And I have like a little sign that I made with it. And it's just a verse that was really encouraging to me.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
And
encouragement.
kind of along those lines, the song that I was kind of came to mind with this is His Mercy is More. Um,
Mm,
I have the Shane and Shane version, but there's a lot of artists that do it.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, just talking about how it's God, it's His ministry, it's His work in us, it's
Mhm.
His mercy that is greater than everything. So
That
I
is
just
so
wanted to share
beautiful.
that song.
Thank you. That is so beautiful.
Mhm.
Honestly, Tori, there are so many more conversations we could have today based on the notes that you shared with me in our conversation today. But I think what we'll do is we'll end here and we will just say thank you so much for your encouragement and for sharing your journey. And I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people. So I wanted to say thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing your story. It's a delight to see what God is doing in you and through you. And I can't wait for more conversations to come. It's really exciting.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to it. So maybe we'll do like a part two and we'll get into more of what your ministry looks like right now specifically. But thank you so much for sharing. And I look forward to more conversations.
Thank you.